Hi everybody. I am just thrilled here to be with actor, director, writer Zach Braff to talk about a movie I was told about and saw was amazing. A Good Person. Hi, Zach.
Hi, Dr. Bob. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and I think people are going to want to hear about this for a number of reasons, including that you mentioned tapping, which we'll get to in a little bit. But for those maybe that don't know, maybe we could just tell them what the movie's about, or
Well, just in the most simplest form and without any spoilers, because this is in the trailer, the film is about a car accident that occurs where there are two fatalities. And it's about how that horrible tragedy affects the lives of these two families
yeah.
and how two people in particular, an older man played by Morgan Freeman and a young woman played by Florence Pugh, struggle to stand back up again after a tremendous loss.
Yeah. It's a journey. I had I had a lot of tears going through it. It was
Yeah.
a lot of really, I mean, it was just it's a great if you're a
Well, I
film.
love that. I love an experience personally, of really getting so lost in a narrative that you're feeling the feelings that the characters are feeling, where you feel the pangs of their heartbreak. You see yourself in them.
Yeah.
But also I provide some humor, so it's not too. I don't want to scare people away. It's not too maudlin. There's plenty of
No,
humor as well.
you do some. I don't want to bring out the line. There's the line in between Morgan and the daughter, the granddaughter.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God, that was one of the funniest things I've ever heard. It was
Well,
so.
I got to tell you, thank you for that. I find that when you pull drama and emotion like a rubber band, the tension is so tight that when you do have a release of laughter, the audience is almost more likely to guffaw than they would because there's been such built up emotional tension, and I think that there's a real art to trying to do that. So I'm glad to hear it worked.
No, it worked for me, and I mean, I have particular interest since I think humor in therapy is important. And sometimes
Yeah,
you
me too.
need to know how to have humor in time and a place. And I have to say, the writing, I just felt it was so. You have such a gift for. I mean, it felt like this is what people would literally say.
Thank you.
I
Thank
was,
you. Well, I feel very attached to it. The story, the plot points are not my life.
yeah.
But I've lost a lot of people. I've lost four people, loved ones, in the last 4 years, and one was my best friend who got COVID and passed away while living in my guest house at the very beginning of the pandemic. He was 41 years old and left behind a wife and a baby.
Hmm.
So I only say that to say that when I sat down to write this, the grief and loss and the idea of how we human beings stand back up again after the roughest times of our life was what I wanted to write about. And
Mhm.
so that was underlying the specific story that I laid on top of it. The story that I laid on top of it is not my life, but the underpinnings of what I was feeling in my heart is what I poured onto the page.
And so I guess you also had her, well, I guess she didn't use it. Her psychiatrist apparently taught her some tapping, and it wasn't clear.
Well, yeah. Well, the reason that tapping is in the movie, I just wanted to go into tapping because I know that's one of your main interests.
Yeah.
My stepmother is very interested in tapping. She's a therapist, and I was going through a rough time, and I was depressed, and she's a big proponent of tapping, and does it in her practice, and does it and does it herself. And it was right around the time I was writing the movie, and I was, of course, very skeptical and rolling my eyes at her. As I'm sure you encounter people who you present this to,
Yeah.
and I have to say that I had a really good experience with my first session with her, and she and it was just really prominent on my mind, including this one, which I sometimes use as just an emergency. It's sort of like pulling a fire alarm on myself.
Yeah. Time of stump. Yeah.
Yeah, that really helps me a lot when I can sometimes still feel panic start to rise, and I just do that very basic one which she taught me, and that's a little bit of a miracle to me. So I folded that into the film because I thought, I imagine the doctors were throwing the kitchen sink at this woman to try and help her, anything that would work, whether it be meds, whether it be tapping, and she had been presented with all of these tools as someone likely would be. but she's, you know, she's become an addict. Her mom is saying, look, you got to get, her mom is not really equipped, played by Molly Shannon, to
She was
help
great.
her.
Yeah, she was
She's
great.
an enabler, and she's a functioning alcoholic herself, and she's not really able to help her, but she's trying to help her. So she says, why don't you, there's a scene early on where she says, why don't you try the tapping that one doctor taught you? Do you remember? And she's sort of doing it poorly. She doesn't really know what she, because she wasn't really there for the sessions.
Right, right.
But then later, when Florence is really suffering and trying to go cold turkey, we see her calling back up some of the techniques, because she too got something, we infer must have gotten something out of it, and is trying everything she can.
Yeah. No, I was, yeah, it was great. It's interesting to hear how it was helpful for you.
No, I really liked it, and I want to do more. I really only have done the session with my stepmother, who I had to admit at the end, she goes, doesn't that feel better? And I had to smile and be like, it actually does. I can't believe it. um
This
so
crazy,
I
I mean, how could that possibly work?
No, of course. I'm sure you and the people listening encounter this all the time. It's just, it's hard to get past the skepticism of it. But then when you try it and you notice it,
Mhm.
you can quickly be a convert.
Yeah. And yeah, well, I'm glad. Thank you for putting in the movie, and I'm glad to hear you talk about it, because yeah, the more people that know it is a little strange, but once you kind of get the experience,
Yeah, I think the key for me was just getting the experience, and now it's going to be finding more. You know, I know there's YouTube videos and there's lots of research to be done online, but now it's, for me, it's a matter of learning more about it, which I'm very interested in.
well, I can hook you up.
Yeah, I think you might be the guy to hook me up.
I think I could do that. It's sort of relevant, I think, to tapping about, and the whole process of that she goes through, about really any journey of going through hardship, right? Because we fight the journey.
Yes, I think we fight the journey, and for me, the concept of it's always helpful to me to catch myself trying to swim upstream for what the universe is giving me, and and I wanted to fold that idea of, you know, and it obviously overlaps with the Serenity Prayer in AA, but this idea of just going with what you can't, you know, not trying to fight against the things that you can't control,
Right.
and being aware of the things you can control. And and so, yeah, that is a major theme in the film. Is you know, when we're all in, when each of us is in trauma or in a grief state, we're clutching for any way to get out of it as soon as possible. Whereas there is some power in letting go, and going with the flow, and allowing the universe to take you where it's going to take you. Obviously, you can steer that ship, but you certainly can't control it all.
No, right. And even tapping, when I talk to people, it's like you're not trying to kill the problem. If you try to kill
Yeah,
the problem, it doesn't work as well. You're trying to allow the flow. One of the things that's happening is in acupuncture, it allows the energy to move. It's the it's
yeah,
it's the stuckness that keeps it the problem.
yeah.
If you try to
I really like that.
get rid of it, then it
And it's
doesn't.
also, it dovetails with meditation for me, because I do a little meditation every morning, and I feel that, again, I don't know, I know very little about tapping. I'm interested to learn, but for me, when you're focusing on it, you're focusing on the methods, and it's silencing, it's quieting your mind simultaneously.
Right. Well, part of it is, just, oh, we'll take a minute, is that when you're doing this, usually you're doing, if it's EFT, there's some different, you're saying, even though I have this problem, I accept myself, which is very
Yeah.
meditative, very acceptance. And then you're tapping and you're attending to it, but you're not getting, it's more mindful. It forces you to be a little
Yes.
further back. And so it's doing all of those things, and you're activating the acupuncture system, so you're getting the energy to move. So it's actually doing a whole bunch of things all at the same time. And then
Yeah.
something else comes up, and then you tap on that. And
Yeah.
well, and then it,
I like that. It feels like an active way to participate in something meditative, as opposed to just sitting there, which is wonderful, and I get a lot out of that. I don't mean to minimize it,
sure.
but what I liked about my EFT experience was the idea of giving myself something physical to do whilst in a meditative state.
Yeah. it can be very meditative to go through that, and you're having something to do, and you're being compassionate, and you're noticing. And if you're doing it with somebody else, if there's a practitioner, then you get the benefit of having that person with you who's also calming. And so there's
Yeah,
this interpersonal effect of, because usually the practitioner is tapping along, so
yeah,
they stay nice and calm. And so you
yeah,
get this nice general effect of being together, which is
yeah.
another thing in the movie, by the way. There was this, I don't think this is giving anything away, but there's this one scene in the movie where they're having, it's Morgan Freeman, it's Florence, and it's the granddaughter. It's there's kind of
Celeste
Celeste.
O'Connor is the
Yes,
actress.
yeah, Celeste. And so there's this big mishmash, and it's pretty conflictual. And then there's this invitational. Why don't you, can we all, let's hang. And I thought that was like, oh my God, that was so amazing to just, we're gonna stay, we're gonna stay in the field and
Yeah,
work through this somehow.
you gave me goosebumps because I haven't heard it articulated like that. I think that, yeah, I think that Morgan's character Daniel has created a bit of a big mess, and but he really doesn't know. He has no skill set how to handle this. But he just comes up with an idea, like, what if we had pizza together? You know,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the best idea. It's not necessarily a bad idea. He just goes, let's throw pizza at the problem, and let's all. What if the three of us sat down and had a meal and broke bread together?
Yes.
And it actually, for better or for worse, it does begin to melt the ice of the problem.
Right. And that's sort of the theme, I think, is this unfolding of being with and not changing it, right? And so it's messy,
Yes, and you have
not
to be
perfect.
vulnerable. I mean, the key word is vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
You have to be willing. That's kind of a really important word for me this year. I'm really focusing on that. Of course, putting out a movie that's personal to Earth is very vulnerable, but y- you you know one thing my stepmother always says as a therapist is the bigger the breakdown, the bigger the breakthrough.
Mhm.
And I think that if you allow yourself to be in that vulnerable, messy space, even if it's uncomfortable, some wonderful breakthroughs can come from it.
Well, again, I hope people will, go see this movie, because I just think it's a gem, and for
Thank you.
the music, by the way, is just fantastic.
Thank you. I'm very, the Garden State soundtrack 20 years ago won the Grammy for best
Right.
soundtrack of the year, and so I don't know. I really love doing it. I love putting the music together.
Yeah.
The movie's now on streaming, so if
Oh,
people,
really?
yeah, so if it's no longer playing in the theater near you, people can find it wherever they rent movies, iTunes or Amazon or wherever people go. It's available now.
Well, great. Well, thank you for your time, Zach. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and please do let me know if a good practitioner in the LA area, because I'd love to keep it going.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right, thank you.